I'm ᴛʀɪṕᴇs, and I'm here in my capacity as the co-founder of the ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ Festival in Tangier, Morocco. Everyone's going to introduce themselves and their own work here, but I wanted to start by saying that right now is actually supposed to be another event that I was going to be doing with the Palestinian artist Shema Nader, and Shema isn't coming back to Documenta for a variety of different reasons, so she's not here, and so in light of that, we decided to do something a little bit different. So this plan came together very quickly, sort of spur of the moment, but makes a lot of sense given the relationships between the different initiatives and sort of institutions or non-institutions that we represent together, and it's something that is very much within our worlds that we share in North Africa and Morocco and Northwest Africa, as we were debating calling it, and we can talk about that too. So without further ado, maybe we'll pass this along and people can introduce the various spaces, programs, initiatives that we represent here. Maybe we should start with the ⴛ because you're the ones who are welcoming us here in Kassel at Documenta to begin with.
Hello, thank you for being here, and thank you, Georges, for the introduction. I actually will be talking on the behalf of ⴛ, which I'm one of the members, but as well Francesca is here as ⴛ as well, but also as QANAT. She's going to talk about it. I think this conversation is also a way to understand how we can be one part of one project, but also part of other projects, and that's the complexity of our network and our constellation. This is, I guess, what we wanted to share with you today, and how we came all together to meet in Kassel Documenta through ⴛ as like one center of this constellation, but it's not the only one. I guess all of the project could be the center of the constellation, and through the different stories that each one will say, we probably can give a little bit of sense of how we encounter, we meet together, and how we encounter the project of each one. So my name is Leila, I said it. I've kind of initiated ⴛ in 2013 with a friend of mine who could also be part of the conversation, but he's just waking up now. He's also in Kassel. He's invited. We're going to have a conversation with him and I tomorrow, talking about how our friendship also was the starting point of like imagining project together. So that was in 2013, and so I met Francesca in 2015, George in 14, Carlos 13, something like this. Maybe I'm wrong with some dates, but more or less we met at different moments, and we didn't meet especially to work together. We first meet just because friends introduced us, or because we got interested in each one's project. So we met in certain places, in certain moments, and to me the story of ⴛ has a lot to do with one space, because it's first the physical space that has brought us to meet. So all of us, actually myself, have met all of these people in this space, in this physical space. And physical space means a lot to me, because it's also a way for me to share what I do, what I know, and conversations, friendships, practices, etc. And so other projects have taken other forms, and I guess this is what we're going to be talking about. And I pass the mic to someone else.
Welcome everyone. So I'm Francesca. I'm part of ⴛ, as Leila was saying. I came to Marrakech for the first time in 2015 and met Leila immediately after, and started as an intern and never left, basically. What can I add? I mean, I think, yeah, the conversation of today and really the the group of people that we have decided to invite for this event, particularly this week. I think we are 21 or 25, and now there are some more close friends that are actually joining because they are just around the corner for the summer. Really shows how, I mean, at the very least, the projects that we represent in this panel, but also, as Leila was saying, many others, including ᴛᴏɪṕᴇs that Isham created and others, have been allowed to create this very interesting network of relationships that first of all exist within Morocco and across the cities of Morocco, but actually what I think is also very, very interesting to see is how they also expand within the region and beyond. To give an example, there was very moving for me, Fira Samdan, who is actually DJing tonight and did a beautiful cooking workshop session yesterday, is somebody that I first met through a curatorial collective that I became part of by meeting people through ⴛ but they work independently from ⴛ and that then we decided to invite for projects in Morocco, but also in Germany, for instance. And now it's actually Leila who suggested to invite him here 4 years later. Similar story goes, for instance, for Feras Publishing Practices, which is one of the Lumbung artists over here, and that back in 2016, this collective that I was mentioning invited for the very, very, very first projects, and now we meet again after many years, also through Documenta. I guess I can just briefly say a couple of words about QANAT, which is it's a project that started within ⴛ cultural programming, and maybe something interesting again to keep thinking about how specific relations built on others. QANAT was started within another collaborative projects that involved Carlos and what was it? No, Wadan. Carlos and his many projects that he's going to talk about later. It also involved, of course, ⴛ and other 5 cultural institutions across North Africa, the Middle East, and also Southern Europe, Spain specifically. And the project of QANAT, which has a focus on water politics and poetics, but also forms of commoning and sharing and being collective and testing what being a collective means. Then little by little evolved into a platform that keeps being held within ⴛ but that over time has built relationships with very close neighbors, such as the Darbellaj Foundation, which is a foundation in Marrakech that works primarily with inhabitants, such as women and children, and with whom we have been working very closely, particularly since 2019. But then through the friendships that encounters via residencies, via workshops, via invitations have been built. It is expanding beyond Morocco. We have been doing projects in Palestine, in the Netherlands, very recently in Wales, in the future in Scotland, and I guess I'll stop here for now. And
yes, okay. So as I said, I am Ģeorge Bjalia, one of the co-founders of the ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ Festival in Tangier, along with Zakaria Alilesh and Tom Kasserly. Just a bit about the ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ Festival. So ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ in Arabic, but in Moroccan Arabic, means 2 days. And so it's a festival that takes place over the course of 48 hours. And just to say, some of the photos behind us, we all put in a bunch of photos of these various initiatives, so you may not know which one is which, but hopefully it will become clear as we talk about what we do. So the ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ Festival is something that we started 8 years ago, and I'm an anthropologist. I'm a professor of anthropology at Wesleyan University in Connecticut in the US, and my practice looks at the sort of cultural vitality that emerges out of borderlands And somehow the ᴛᴏɪɪn Festival came out of a curiosity in that, but also a desire to set the terms of these research collaborations with artists who were reflecting on these same things. And what we came up with is, what if we got together a bunch of our friends, we all talked about a common theme for 2 days and created new work together? What would happen? And it was sort of a spontaneous idea. I think Leila was in the first edition where the theme was barzakh, or limbo. And I found a photo of you working that will be up there on some point. Maybe you don't want to turn around and see it. But so we started that, and from there it grew to the point where we just had our 7th edition 8 years later, because we took a year off during COVID. And at this point, I was counting it up this morning, we've worked with over 180 artists from 17 different countries that have all come to Tangier, usually just for 2 days, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And we have no lasting institution, we have no lasting space. But what we do have is lasting relationships and community. And very often, those very same people who we work with, we either know them, or they find out about the festival, or we find out later that they're also working with the ģiṣvīt, they're also working with QANAT, they're also working with the many caravans of Carlos, Caravan Tikmer, Caravan Widdan, and they end up moving between these 3 places. What's interesting, and one of the other things that I think was interesting for us to talk about today, was the idea of caravan routes, right? Thinking about the south of Morocco, thinking about the Sahel, thinking about Mauritania, thinking about movements from the desert to the Mediterranean Sea, and the various places that people pass through, which people have been passing through for so long, right? And what if we start to look at those a little bit differently and reactivate our awareness of these routes through thinking about the arts, through thinking about artistic practice, cultural practice. And without really realizing it, it ended up that that's kind of something that we're all doing, connecting from, the edges of the Sahara and the Sahel to the edge of the Mediterranean Sea, from Ceuta to Tangier, all the way down to Marrakech, and then Tikmeret, Widdan, etc. So I think maybe I'll leave it. Oh, I wanted to say also, we also met Firas in the ᴛᴏɪɪn Festival too. So the project that he started with in Marrakech, then ended up in Tangier, and then had multiple other iterations, and now Firas is here at Documenta, none of which was ever expected. I think we knew each other for years without actually knowing each other until we met in 2018, and I joined QANAT at that point too, with knowing QANAT, but never having been a part of it, and then realizing, oh wow, we have all these connections and we know all the same people. And I think that happens more often than we realize, and maybe it's worth taking a moment to stop and reflect what we do have and how we can build from that, not necessarily for institutional purposes, but for collective purposes, thinking with this theme of collectives and mobility that's coming up at Documenta this year. So I'll pass this on to Carlos now.
I will come back to that. I'm Carlos Perez. I'm an architect living in a small Spanish city in the north of Africa, or in the Strait of Gibraltar. And we started really in 2013 to do things in a small oasis in the south of Morocco, in Termirt, in the province of ģelmim, and with friends like Ahmed Dabah, Bushra Budali, and then other artists were joining the collective and the conversation, Mohamed Arzal, Barbushishi, Laila. Even today, we don't know how to describe what we do there, but we don't care. We have no funding, so we don't have to justify anything at all. So we are free to do whatever we want, when we want, we want. We don't have to do things with one artist from Europe, another artist from the MENA region, another artist, no. So we have a really freedom to do what we do, no? But at the beginning it was just to share the knowledge that some of us researching in the desert in different fields, like architecture, like sociology, like agriculture, like history. So we said, because also there are a lot of artists in Morocco coming from the south or with roots in the south, but you have to know that it's like if the people in northern Morocco are a little bit ashamed of saying that we are from the desert, no? And then they started to realize that there is so much culture. And in fact, if you see the main dynasty that has been running the country for centuries, most of them come from desert regions. So in a way, you need to understand the desert to understand the history and the contemporary history of Morocco. So, having said that, Tirmart was a kind of Saharan port where caravans left towards Mauritania and Mali, or received caravans coming from Mauritania and Mali, belonging to a huge network connecting the Sahel, the Maghreb, and Europe. And if you see the position of all these projects, we have Tanger, we have Marrakech, Tirmart, and then we have in Mauritania Ouadane. All of them are connected by caravan. As you said, we didn't realize that. It was making research, exploring territories and filled with the friends, with the artists coming, that we realized that we had to go deeper. And that's why when we were in Tirmart and people say, no, caravans went to Mauritania, Ouadane. Okay, let's go to Mauritania to see what we can find on the other side of on the other shore of the Sahara Desert. And there, since last year, we are doing Caravan Ouadane. We are working also, making researches in the oasis of Ouadane with Zaida Bilal, with Zainat, with Teranim, with all the people doing things in Mauritania and Senegal, no? Which for me it's very quite interesting. No? You start in one place and then you need to know more and you meet more people. But again, it's not about, okay, let's do a culture project. No? And if we are talking about caravans, we had to know more about caravans. So we started to walk following the caravan route with the nomads. It is anthropologic research, I don't know, but I have learned with some of the artists like Laila or other that came to two of these caravans, or qafila in Arabic. We learn about history, about architecture, about water resources, QANAT. We learn about architectural heritage, the one made by the Almoravids coming from Mauritania. So in fact, it's the question of having curiosity to know more and to share the knowledge, not to keep this knowledge for us in an academia way, and then you cannot have access if you pay to read the publication. No? And it is also to learn from other people coming with you. It is not just us who are going to teach the other. No? And I think, and maybe also to follow the discussion, it is how we do that in terms of organization, or in terms of, because there is what we do together, there is no program behind, there is no funding behind. It is just, again, because we want to do that, not because we have to do that. No? I don't know how you see.
Well, I would like to continue on one thing that you raised, Carlos, the question of the caravans and how it connected people from the south of the Sahara, from the Sahara to north of Morocco. And you've addressed it also, Georges. But I think one important point is that we are located in different places. Our projects are located in different places, regions of Morocco. And so each project also is rooted in its own context. And the question of learning is very important. At ― we've learned a lot from our own street, of our own neighborhood, and other projects that are neighbor projects like Darbelaj, Francesca was mentioning, with whom has been collaborating a lot. And the reason why it's us who are, it's this group who's presenting today is that first of all, we're not all of us. We're much more people in our team at ―, but also the constellation and like all these connections. So it's hard to, it's just by chance we're here and we decided we're going to do it. But at the same time, it shows also, it's interesting to see that Carlos is Spanish, Francesca is Italian, George is Palestinian American and Moroccan. Some other projects who would be presented that are located in other places would have another typology, another type of connection. Marrakech is that city that connects people from many parts of the world because it's been since centuries, it's been a carrefour of caravans. So caravans would come from different regions, from the south, and it would be a very important stop for commerce, for trading, and for sharing. And so today it's a different type of stop, of carrefour, because it's also a carrefour of tourism, which has slightly changed the landscape of the city for the good and for the bad. But then it has brought people from other parts of the world and interests from other parts of the world. And it's since decades now we see a lot of art, 1 decade maybe, we see a lot of Western artists or like even from other continents coming and having interest to Marrakech. So I guess it's an important thing to say that I think each region attracts people because they also relate and somehow wants to connect to that regional project for some reasons. And that's also something that can appear in the kind of project that we do. So at ᴛᴜɪԻြ, for example, there's a lot of artist residencies. ᴛᴜᴜᴛᴜ is interesting because there's like 2 days happening in Tangier, and Tangier was zone internationale for a while, where people would just come for 1 day, spend few days, and leave. And I feel that without really like not that obvious, but there somehow like each project is also like influenced by its own by the history and then the environment. Maybe this is what I want.
In fact, we are doing nothing exceptional because you have to know, in the 11th century, people coming from Mauritania, they found Marrakech. Okay. At the same time, or some years later, two persons from Ouaddań go to Ceuta to learn from ᴑᴏɪʲᴜ. Then they come back to Mauritania. They decided to found Ouaddań. The guide, the teacher, ᴑᴏɪʃ, came to Marrakech with another guy from Ceuta, Mohammed Belabes, and the two of them became two of the the 7 saints of Marrakech. So it was already connected in the past. So we are just trying to continue this connection and this mentality that at the very beginning of Marrakech was connecting, as I said, Sahel, Maghreb, and Europe. Now it's the same thing, I think.
Yes. I agree. I think that was at least part of the impulse I had when we were debating the other day about what to call this. And at first we were like, in Morocco. No, it's not just Morocco. In North Africa, yeah, but then what about when we start to talk about Mauritania and then Senegal? Oh, that doesn't include it. What about the Maghreb? Well, Senegal is not really a part of the Maghreb, so do we use the Maghreb and the Sahel? And then are we just translating between languages? And we went back and forth, and I put a proposal on the table that, I don't know if it was the best proposal, but it was to call it in Northwest Africa, which in some ways what it does is it sets aside the sort of Francophone colonial distinctions of North Africa and West Africa. North Africa being code for white Africa, and West Africa being code for black Africa, right? That was how it was coded in the French colonial cartography of this region. But what Carlos is saying, and I think what we're all saying in different ways, is that these areas are of course connected. They've always been connected. The connections between them are nothing new, right? It's a line on a map that says these places aren't connected. And maybe it's a police patrol that says these places are not connected, but people go back and forth across them. Of course they do. They always have and they always will. I think maybe what's novel about the reflections that we're having is it's an attempt to say, okay, if we acknowledge that they're connected, where can that lead us in our thinking as cultural practitioners, as artists, as curators, as people who are making work with other people in collaboration, rather than saying, oh, well, if it's something grounded in Marrakech, it has to be about Marrakech. No, it's actually about all these other connections that emerge in Marrakech. If it's something grounded in Tangier, it has to be about Tangier. No, it's actually about all these other connections that emerge in Tangier. And putting that perspective at the forefront, I think, is something that unexpectedly maybe has emerged in all of our sort of different wanderings, one way or another.
I just want to say, all of you, that since it's, as you can see, it's a quite informal conversation and very much spontaneous. So if you have any question, comments, if anyone of also, the constellation we are talking about wants to share thoughts or questions or comments, feel free.
Yeah, what keeps coming on my mind, are you a network to produce art, or is art producing a network? I'm still puzzled what actually you want to do. Is it? I mean, it's great you are typically good friends, but you haven't talked much about art. So I was wondering, where does that position?
I can tell what we tell the artists coming to Tirmidh and Wadan. Because the desert is a quite complex space where everybody has an idea through films, through books, through many other things. But it's more complex than the city. So we realized that we couldn't ask artists to come for 10 days and to produce something. Because if they were not going to understand the place and the people and the history. So we told them, look, you can do, if you are from the place, you can produce with what you find, because we have no money to produce. And you can do researches on subjects related to the desert. You can do workshops with the children, with the kids, with the women, but not for entertainment them, just to get inside the oasis and the society and their houses. But also you can stay doing nothing, just watching, listening, being in a place. It's just enough stuff. And if they are really interested and they do things interesting, they can come another year and another. So because also that's the other question, maybe we could talk later. It's what is the impact of what we doing in each places, in the Medina of Marrakech, in Tangier, in other places you work, or in Tirmidh on Wadan, no? But that's why also we felt, I think, quite integrating the proposition of Ruan Grupa, that it is not a question just of producing exhibitions. I think we are not in that point. No?
Just from the side of ⴛʀɪြmane, because it is kind of explicitly a contemporary art and performance festival, and we bring people to produce new work over the course of the 48 hours, we think of it as really process focused, right? In the sense that no one is going to be able to do their best work in 48 hours, but putting that time constraint there allows you to relinquish the sort of fetish of having to have the most produced piece at the end of it, and lets you sit in the process and lets you sit in this moment of collaboration with people. In the end, the exhibition goes up, there's a sort of opening event, and we take it down the next morning. It's gone. The artists can take their work, they can leave it with us. We have sort of, I have a closet full of a lot of different really interesting works that people have made over the years. And sometimes people come back and get them years later. Sometimes they stay in the archive. So for us, and it's not really on the question of art as much as it is on the question of ephemera, right? That actually we're interested in the ephemera of it. We're interested in fully investing ourselves as much as we can in the process in order for it to disappear at the end. I don't know what that says about art, but we do think about it, I guess.
I mean, to me, I think the question, I mean, what is art? I don't know. I think that to a certain extent, and I think I speak also at least for Leila, I mean, the the sort of art we do is actually creating a net, spaces of different forms. They can be physical spaces, but they can also be simply, let's say, relational spaces in which many ways of weaving and knitting and connecting together can take place. And sometimes they take the form of a physical object in an installation or a project, but some other times is intangible forms of relationality that keep existing over the years, way beyond the physical object per se. I mean, both within Le 18 and also within QANAT specifically, we do work a lot with, of course, artists, whether young or less young, offering space not only for research but for production as well, for exhibitions. But that has never been our, I think, exhibition has never been the only focus of Le 18. When people define the space as a gallery, we feel a little bit like, no, it's not a gallery, really. It's a house, actually. It's a home. I think, Le 18 is the only project here that has maybe a more permanent and clearly defined physical space. And over the years, I've been thinking a lot of how much importance that actually offers to this really large group of people to have been able to meet. I personally meet, the three of them over there, but I think most of the people that we have invited today, as much as other people beyond this group in that space, and I think, let's say, maybe leading a project that doesn't have a different space, but knowing that there is that sort of home to always come back to, and also to show work, to artworks, is quite essential.
I also have a question, also like a follow-up question about artworks. Actually, I don't know much. My research is on Southeast Asian art and Asian art in general. I don't know much about Moroccan art, but I was drawn to this panel because of the title, Revising Historical Roots, Revisiting Historical Roots. So I wonder, like, when you're working with contemporary artists who are responding to this historical not events, but like the historical caravan route. What's your reflections about like historical revisionism that you see in contemporary art, and also about like artists' moral responsibilities, or your thoughts on that? I would like to hear your feedback or comments on that.
Okay. Just on the title, revisiting, revising, I don't think it was as much suggesting historical revisionism in the way that that's kind of used as a, revising of historical narratives to rewrite something, as much as it was a proposal to say, when often we think about caravan routes, we think of them as carrying very specific practices and peoples and ways of being, and I think we might also think about them as carrying practices of knowledge, as much as goods, as much as people who were moving for labor, whether voluntarily or because they were enslaved, as much as it was carrying, let's say, religious practices, ways of being, practices of Islam through different parts of North Africa and West Africa. It also was carrying knowledge. It was carrying things that we might today look at and say, oh, this is art as such, right? And so maybe we can revise that narrative to say we're in continuity with that. We're revisiting that and saying this is, as Carlos was saying earlier, it's always been like this. We just don't normally think about a caravan route as something that's involved with quote-unquote artistic or cultural practice in a way. I think that was kind of the impetus behind it.
Yeah, I just follow what George is saying, but from my own practice as a visual artist, I've been very much interested in, and this is the reason why I've been following Carlos in many caravans in Tirmet, Morocco, but as well in Ouadan, in Mauritania. And I did also one other project of Carlos, which is called Qafila, where we just walk in the desert. So it's a walking practice. One of my main interests in my research or interest in art is, and because I live in Marrakech, which I said is a highly touristic center city in Morocco, I'm interested in how exotism is operated in this context, and how the idea of the oasis, but also some specific elements are used to exoticize. Like the palm tree, for example, is one element that I use in my work to reflect on how the West have been creating an idea of the Orient through writing, literature, etc. So while I was working on this project, I'm very much interested in like literature, cinema, painting, etc. So I guess it's very important to me to experience this Orient through my trips, through spending time there, but also trying to get how I am exoticizing myself this Orient. And this Orient is also the homeland of my family. All my family grew up in a city that it's in the very far east of Morocco on the Algerian border called Figuig. And I've never been there before my 31st year. I only heard about this place. And so I've imagined it through what an oasis is supposed to be. It is an oasis. So I've always imagined this place to be like this amazing palm grove, etc., etc. And so I have decided at one point to go there and to see it, and to see how this distance of like how I've been raised in this Western narrative of the oasis, and what it is actually, how it looks like, etc. And so this is just from my own experience, and I guess it's also giving space for artists to experiment as well, and to through different research projects connect to this past history, pre-colonial history, acknowledging also that there are other forms of art than the one that we've been taught or that we know. I mean, as artists that have been educated in a Western type of art history. And this is just, as Georges said many times, is a continuity not only of the caravans, but caravans of art spaces, of research spaces have been there since a long time. Maybe not physically as spaces, but they were collectives since a few decades, since the 60s. We've been very much inspired by a group of artists from Casablanca who have initiated. They didn't initiate a school per se, but they initiated maybe a movement without noticing that they were doing. But I encountered this through a journal that they were doing at that moment called Souffle, where artists, but as well as poets, as writers, would collaborate. So I think it's also a very important moment for us to acknowledge all these initiatives that's been there, and to also participate in bringing up this archive, and it's happening through different projects of ours, but others as well that we didn't mention, that are existing in Casablanca, in Rabat, in Tiznit, in Oujda, there's places that we don't talk at all. Even in our own context, it's very important to us at some point to continue to connect to these other parts of the territory, like broader territory.
In terms of decolonized art, I'm so tired to listen all these things. Imagine Ceuta and Tangier in the Strait of Gibraltar. Can you imagine how many civilization, empire, dynasty has passing through there from the Mediterranean, from the Atlantic, from Europe, from Africa? In Ceuta, we have a huge heritage coming from all these civilizations. And we, instead of criticizing, they were like us. They are good, they are bad. No, they are learning about what they did. No? But when you go to Marrakech, when you go to Tirma or Nulamta, when you go to Adrar, they also have a very rich history of people moving. You have to also, it's important to explain that a caravan is like the highway to today. When you ask a nomad how long it takes to go to one city, they are going to say 1 week by walk. And for them, 1 week is like if you take the train here to go to Frankfurt in 1 or 2 hours. So it's the scale of time is completely different. So in Morocco and all these areas, people used to go from Senegal to Algeria, from Morocco to Egypt, or to Mali, from Mali from Sudan. And we did researches to better understand all this connection. So there are tribes that came from Yemen, from Saudi Arabia, from Egypt, from Tunisia, and people that are still there. So if we are talking about colonization in Morocco, it has been the whole time like that. So there are so many things still to learn that I don't want to spend time on academics or issues that are, I don't know.
I'll spend some time on it. I'm happy to do that. Spend a lot of time on academic issues. Just to further complicate it a little bit more, too, one of the things I remember years ago, Carlos and I met, and you showed me one of the caravan routes, a map that you had found or made, or I don't quite remember. And some of the research I do is around what we think of as migrant routes, right, from West Africa towards Europe. And one of the things I'm particularly interested in is waiting, right? The time that people spend waiting, whether that's weeks or months or years or a decade, and how that time is something we very often consider empty, vacuous time, but in fact it's very full of life. Things are produced, lives are lived, etc. All of which is to say, when I looked at this map that Carlos showed me, I was like, oh wow, this overlays pretty well with all of the ways that people have been telling me, we've moved from, Cameroon to Senegal, Senegal up here to Mali, Mali through to Mauritania. Here we went to Algeria, then we went to Libya, we crossed back through Algeria to Morocco, now we're in Morocco and we're waiting. Right, and that map would appear on any number of news organizations' websites and be like, the migratory route, migrants waiting to get into Europe. Right, I mean, is this not a caravan? Are those people not also artists? Many of them are. Right? Are they not producing things, or are they just spending time waiting to get to Europe? So that's another interest that I have in revising a bit. And I don't think it fits into a question of decolonial or anti-colonial, but one thing I would say is there's always a question of power, and even decolonized art, there's still questions of power, right? Even anti-colonial art, there's still questions of power. It doesn't really matter if it's decolonized. You still have to interrogate that at every moment, I think.
One of the artists from Caravan Tirmat, he was an immigrant. He wanted to be an art student from Gelmim, and because there is no the artist bachelor in ģilmīm, so he couldn't go to study to Tetuan, the only art school in Morocco. So he was 17, and the only thing he could do is to take money from his parents and to pay someone to cross in with other immigrants in a small boat to the Canary Island where he arrived. Then they put him in the south of Spain, and then in Ador the police told him, okay, you can go to your home. Yeah, my home is 2,000 kilometers. I have no money at all. That's your problem, you know. And he wanted to go again, you know. And finally, a teacher helped him, and he finally came to Tetuan to study. And he's a quite very good artist right now. So we know, we have big experiences. Not myself, our collective, and now taking about the impact. People in our team in ᴛᴏɪʲᴜ that they wanted also to go to Europe, and thanks to the collaboration with artists, they are now developing agriculture project, and so now he decided to stay at home and to continue to be a part of the ᴛᴏɪʲᴜ. You know, so for me that's an impact much more than appear in an article about an exhibition. You know?
Other questions? Last thoughts up there?
I want to ask you a question. Are your life going to be different, especially the 18 after participating to Documenta 15?
I would say definitely, but I'm not going to expand on this here. Definitely, and not necessarily in a only positive way, I think.
Yeah, no, I just want to add one thing, but not responding to this question is that, yeah, it's true that I told you that yesterday or a few days ago that I feel that I personally, in the way I do things, and we all have different way of working. We're different projects. We are connected. We work together, but we also do our things in different ways. And ᴛᴏɪṕᴜ I think I've encountered for the first time a project that I relate to and that I feel I'm very close to in their way of practicing and bringing people together and proposing, just because they've invited us, but they gave us like total freedom. They haven't been controlling any of our proposals in the way that it's really trust, and so it comforts us in a way that we're just doing the thing in the right way. I mean, that we feel is the right way, but at the same time, as people are doing the same thing in the other part of the world, means that somehow it's c'est juste, it's fair, and so I don't think it's going to change much for us in the way we do things. We're just happy that we connected with more people here, and yeah. Inside, indoor? Yeah, that we have a space here. So we actually presenting the project of Le 18 through an indoor space, which is close by here in front of Bob's Bar, which is a space to sit and read and watch films. We have decided that it's a space to, we call it relief center, just to make a pause when one is going around the documenta and all the different proposals. Yeah, on your journey. Okay. And so, yeah, so you are welcome to, please to visit the space, to read some of the publications that we brought. Some of them are our own publications produced from several projects, and some other publication come from a selection of publishing houses, independent publishing houses in Morocco. And then there's a selection of films in our cinema space, small cinema space, which is a selection of North African films that's been important in the history of cinema in Africa, in North Africa. And yeah, I don't know if there's much to say. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing this. And there's plenty of events happening this week. We have decided that we're going to program. We're going to come with public events and program rather than exhibiting work. That was an important shift for those who have been reading our text. It's telling the story of how we have shifted up our first proposal of like putting up an exhibition to not doing an exhibition, but rather bringing as much as possible people from our ecosystem, friends and collaborators, to be here, to share, to propose workshops or conversations, and yeah, have the chance to experience also this amazing Lumbung experience. So we are putting our program, our daily program, on the board here. So there's many things happening, and today is quite a highlight of also one of our program, a well with master musicians from the Atlas Mountains. ᴛᴏɪṕᴇs is here with us, and he'll be performing today with his troupe. So yeah, just check the hours. It's in a few hours, I guess. Yeah, it's at 5. There's one first conversation about Amazigh music at 2, and then there's the performance at 5. So yeah, stay around. It's going to be great.
Thank you.